This is the signed number review. This is part 3. We have been talking about our addition and subtraction rules, and now we're going to work some problems that mix these up together. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to take care of a subtraction. I'm going to change this into the addition it needs to be. Now, what we've talked about before is I've rewritten the whole thing with the plus sign here and the opposite sign here. Some people think of this as kind of like a double negative and they change both signs. So often you'll see people just do this and you change it into a plus sign there. But the way I've been talking through it would be -5 minus, so I'm going to add the opposite of -2 is +2. And I'm just going to bring this part down, plus a -6. Now, if you recall what we did in the last problem from part 2, is we can pick any grouping we want to start our additions once we have several. And I'm going to choose to do these two together first, and I'll just carry this one down for another step. -5 plus 2, these have opposite signs, so we end up subtracting. The absolute value of -5 is 5. The absolute value of 2 is 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. The 5 was the larger absolute value. It was negative, so this is negative. Now I'm going to bring down the rest, plus -6. And now we are adding two numbers with the same signs. So our answer is going to be negative because those are both negative. 3 plus 6 is 9. Your answer is -9. Okay, so -10 minus 4 plus 0 plus 18. Let's work like this. Okay, this would be -10 minus 4, so that's plus -4. Plus, well, these are just two regular positive numbers and one of them is 0. 0 plus 18 is 18, right? Have to worry about that. Here, now let's do these. These have the same sign, so we add them together. 4 plus 10 would be 14. They have the same sign, so it's negative. 14 plus 18. And now we are almost ready to go on, almost ready to finish. We have opposite signs, so we need to worry about their absolute values. This absolute value is 14, this one's 18. Subtract them. 18 minus 14 would be 4. 18 had the larger absolute value. It was positive, so our answer is positive. Okay, so let's look at this problem now with an actual absolute value in there. We need to figure out what this is before we can do anything else. The absolute value, which are the straight lines, of -3, that is +3. This problem is 5 minus 3 plus 3. Now, I said before that subtractions and negatives are very closely related. We can do, this is option 1. I can write this as 5 plus -3 plus 3 and then go on from there. Or since this is what we would consider kind of normal subtraction, we can do that first. 5 minus 3 is 2. 5 plus -3 is also 2. It's the same thing. It's a question of how you want to group things together in your brain, how you want to think of them. It's up to you. Either way, we end up with 2 plus 3. That's this plus 3 here. And you get 5 either way. Your answer is 5. Okay. So let's look at this one, this last one. From this on, I will go to a new video after this one. We have 6 minus 7 in parentheses. We're going to be talking a lot more about order of operations after we learn how to deal with multiplication and division as well. But one of the first parts of it that we ever learn when we're going through school is that if things are in parentheses, you're supposed to do that first. So I need to figure out what 6 minus 7 is first. So I'm going to come over here, kind of on scratch paper, you can think of it as 6 minus 7. I'm going to figure out what that is. Well, this would be the same thing as 6 plus negative 7. These have opposite signs, so we would need to subtract their absolute values. The absolute value of negative 7 would be 7. That would be 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. The 7 is the larger absolute value. It was negative, so that's negative. So what I need to put right in here is a negative 1. So I'm going to rewrite this problem as 5 minus 8 minus negative 1, is taking that place right in there, plus 1. Now the trickiest part here is to remember that you have not done this subtraction. All we have done so far is figured out what goes inside this parentheses. Okay. Now let's deal with these two subtractions. This is 5 minus 8, so it's plus the opposite of 8, which is negative 8. Okay. Minus, so this is plus the opposite of negative 1, which is positive 1, and then plus 1. Now we can group these however we want to. Let's do these two, and then these two. 5 plus negative 8, that's the same thing as, well, we need to look at their absolute value. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. And that absolute value would be a 5, and that's an 8. 8 minus 5 would be 3. The 8 is the larger absolute value. It was negative, so that's negative. Here we simply have 1 plus 1, so that's a 2. This plus sign is that plus sign. Now we have negative 3 plus 2. We have opposite signs, so we subtract their absolute values. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. The absolute value of 2 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. 3 was the larger absolute value. It was negative, so your answer is negative. The answer here is negative 1.